All right. We are officially starting the GBM. So today is very just super basic Unity. Pretty much, if you've never used Unity before, today will be perfect for you. If you do have experience already, better. This is directed towards you guys who are just getting into game development. Forgive us for using Unity. We are more familiar with it. We will transfer to Godot when we know it better. Agenda. All right. So again, what is the Unity engine? And the game for cloning is Vampire Survivors. We decided it just looked like it would be a very easy first game, honestly, to clone. So yeah, that's that. We would add an environment and scenes, so it's not just a blank canvas. Adding a playable character and enemies, as you can see, everything of ideas and enemies with 5 lines of code. It really is pretty easy. So yeah, we have our laptops out. Perfect. Well, like you know, do any of you guys want to explain what Unity is?
I'll do that. Actually, I wrote these.
Okay. All right.
So Unity, you might have seen the news on Unity these days. Unity recently announced a per install cost that no one is really happy with. And as a result, Unity lost the trust of many developers. The next slide. But that means that Unity is uncertain for business, but it's still great for learning. So that's why we're covering it still today. And to prove that, Unity has the largest community of game devs, has the most beginner content, has flexible tooling, and has high scalability, which means you can use it for gaming games and AAA games.
All right. You want to explain this, or sure. More familiar? Okay.
I'll explain it.
What is Vampire Survivors? Oh, well, should we?
Yeah, so basically we're just going to show a quick demo just so you can get like the general gameplay aspects viewed, because we're not going to be copying the story. You just need to see how it plays. So if you would.
Here we go.
Vampire Survivors combines the anxiety of a roguelike shoot-'em up genre with all the complexity of a children's toy. Vampire Survivors combines the anxiety of a roguelike shoot-'em up genre with all the complexity of a children's toy. Walk around this big and having kill baddies while collecting weapon upgrades that make you feel like a well-endowed rainbow attractive movie. Still have no idea why this game has an vampire title. My name is this fact or this one. Everything else is just a pixel representation of a standard Halloween monster straight out of Michael Jackson's Thriller. Maybe you want to anticipate that well said yourself later on, but the Wikipedia says that the ultimate boss of every level is death himself, so that's a missed opportunity if you ask me. But overall, I do like this game. And let me tell you why. Simplicity. You need 5 keys: WASD mode, space bar, select things and menus. That's right, the weapons attack for you. It's the true. You start off with one pitiful weapon and you build from there, with the ever-increasing number of enemies slowly marching forward to you like you ate some live shrooms. Kill more monsters and get stronger weapons that help you kill more monsters. The goal is to survive as long as possible and go tactics and other goals, since the session will go on until you are outnumbered or overpowered with the strongest enemies in the game. That's it. There's no more to the game other than some permanent upgrades to buy for gold. It's simple, it's fun. It's $3 on Steam, so buy it and try it before a AAA studio buys it and pumps it full of microtransactions.
So yeah, we didn't make that video, really.
But and technically the price is wrong now. It's a little bit higher now. But yeah,
that's it. Pretty simple, honestly.
So basically the idea for this is, since it is obviously a pretty simple game, we're gonna use the baseline and then we'll upgrade it a little over time. But we're gonna be offering a repository of the code we show here today in next week's, where we actually show you how to use GitHub and scalable it. That's the word. So basically, I wanted to have a platform for all of you guys to work on, and this is a pretty simple one because you can add more enemies, you can change the weapon types. You know, there's just a very obvious amount of upgrades you can do. So now it's time to actually talk about the environment. So tile maps is the first thing we really want to discuss, because this will make your life infinitely easier. With these, basically what you just do is you go on whatever Unity asset store you want to find something that you can use within your licensing, and then just download the tile map. Once you have these assets that you can just see all here, you can literally just glue them onto your scene. Like they just very simply just, and it works. It technically works for environment and scenes, but it also works for characters as well, if I'm understanding. And yeah, so this is really nice.
There are a lot of free assets that you can find, although it's hard to find a good one. It's possible on some of these websites, not just Unity Community.
And like I said, like it's quite easy to do. It's literally just this. Like once you get this down once, you've done it 1,000 times. It's so easy. So another benefit of using the Unity engine is just very quick environments, which is great because I'm a programmer, I'm not an artist. I need someone else's work for this. So sprite atlases are, we didn't really want to talk about these, but we're required for one reason. So if you look at the video, but if you look on the left, there are vertical and horizontal lines in the tiles. That's because of like texture bleeding, and I won't get into why that happens. But sprite atlases, if you make one, add your two sprites to it, it will fix it.
Very simple, super easy.
Hey,
Should we go to the video? Also, we have a 15-minute video. All right, we're exploring the video. Yeah, all right, this is technical stuff.
And yeah, this is just like a one little add-on. So keep in mind when we give you the repository, a lot of this is already going to be in it, baked in, but we're just going over it now first for posterity because this is going to be recorded. You guys will be able to access it later. But also just it's nice stuff to know. So with layering, we just need to know one thing. Basically, just it's a layer. So layers 0, 1, 2, and 3, etc. That's how the graphics will be made. So if you want the character to not be below the ground, you have to render it after the ground. So basically you just say, okay, anything that they're going to be stepping on is going to be layer 1. And layer 2 is like players and interactions. And then depending how you want things to look, you can have like projectiles above that. So projectiles go over the player when they do damage, or they can go through the player if they'd be on the same layer for that. Again, that's just kind of some trial and error stuff. But if you ever notice your graphics aren't working properly, check your layering. That's like 50% of the time. That's the error. It's just your layer's wrong. Okay. So sort axes, Unity sets up this by default, so you usually don't have to worry about it. But if you do notice that your sprites are not displaying this in the right order, you can go to the transparency sort mode and change the axes that Unity uses. If you look on the left image and left Unity, you'll see that y equals 1. It shows that folks in the back as like in the back, out the top in the back. And if y negative 1, it shows the books at the top as being in the front.
All right, perfect. So this is when we start getting to like actually programming the game. Today is today is like the beginning of like a multi-part series we plan where we'll like continuously add on more and more to making the game. But like today is super bare bones, like probably as simple as it gets, just making the player, making the enemy. And making the environment. That's like pretty much it. So yeah, we are going to start adding the playable character. If you guys have Unity open or like any IDE that you want to use, that's cool. So yeah. So here we go, Robert. Cool. Yeah, and by the way, like don't worry too much. Like you don't have to program everything you see on the screen. We're gonna be giving the code out. It's just more if you want to mess around with some of the stuff we're showing today, instead of like waiting for next week when we give you the repository. That will be up to you. So basically, Unity recently changed how the input system works. There's a new one and it works better. So that's what we're going to be using for movement. But as you can see, it's pretty easy. Basically, if you just want something to move, you give it a rigid body, which is quite literally just saying, I want this thing to be affected by gravity, or I want this to be affected by physics. And you can say what you want for the physics, but that's a little over the top. And then there's also colliders, but that's just so you can get hit detection. But usually you need colliders for rigid bodies. So as you can see, literally all we just do is we say, hey, this object is going to have a rigid body, so it can move with a velocity. And then we just say, this is the velocity we're going to give it. So as you can see for this one, this is literally just saying, I want you, and then smoothing it, just making it look better. But literally all this is saying is, hey, I want you to get the input for the movement, which is just saying, hey, does the keyboard ask for some movement? And if it does, you multiply it with the velocity that you want the character to move at, and then it just moves in that direction. So just kind of picture like being pulled on a string, and that's how it's kind of working. Like you just take the rigid body and pull it in the vector you want. Another great thing, Unity has a lot of like presets depending on what kind of game you want to make. So you can skip a lot of like the super simple stuff, like it'll set up like a movement system for you, camera, everything. It's just like, I'm pretty sure it'll really just be called like a 2D or 3D preset before, like while you're making the project, you'll see it. And yeah, you can still alter it and everything depending on what you want, but it just helps you skip a lot of steps and it's really helpful. So yeah, player movement, William, I think you did this part.
So we have 3 classes. We have character,
player character and enemy character. So one of the benefits of like C# is that you can use inheritance, and that lets you say that like character has a function called get movement input, and you can leave it as abstract, which means player and enemy characters can have different ways of implementing that. So with player movement, players are controlled by the keyboard. So on the right, we have a function that takes in an input action reference called movement, and we read it every single frame, and that returns a vector 2, which is our XY value. So X tells you how much you move in the X direction, and Y is like how much to move in the Y direction. And since we have like the code in the movement physics code in the character file, we don't need to implement it again with player. We just tell it where to move, and the character will do it. And this becomes more obvious with enemy movement, because enemies, you'll see that it's also using the so that it always stores a player. Let's use it. So one of the things that we'll notice in code is that it uses a game manager to get the player. A game manager is a singleton, so that means that the game manager can be accessed from any script, and there's always going to be one game manager. So the way that this works is that a player will tell the game manager that it exists, and now using the enemy can use that player reference to access like where it is or how much HP it has and all other sorts of properties that the player has.
All right. So I'm going to kind of get a bit more into the inheritance that William was talking about, but I'm going to make it stupid simple for you. So go ahead, and this is the character class. So just like what we showed before, it is an abstract class. All that means is that everything that's going to be a character will have certain parameters, but how they do it is going to be weird or different. So this is just basic character. So you can see every single character will have health, max health, and attack. Those are just basic features that I thought all things should have. And then it said all characters can take damage, but how they take damage will be considered based on what type of enemy a character it is. Because by itself, there's not going to be a character that's just a character. It'll be enemy character, neutral character, player character, because that means that we can have like the same idea, and it just simplifies code. And as you can see, I'll show you really how it makes it simple. So I want to make a player character. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to say, where was abstract? I'm just going to change it to override. So I'm going to make our player character class. And this right here, when you just see player character, character, all that's saying is I want the idea of the player character to come from the character, basically foundation. Like I made a foundation, I want you to use that. And now, as you can see, where I had take damage before, as you can see right here, there's an abstract there. It's the same thing, except now it's override. Very simple. So now every time a character damage gets called, all you need to do is say, okay, cool, well, this is a player character. So I'm just going to go to the player character. So what type of damage do you want to take? This one. So this is literally just, if it is an enemy doing damage, do damage. If it dies, destroy it. This isn't an optimal way to do it. This is just a very basic way of doing it. It kind of breaks unity, but I just wanted to show how you can very simply kill a character. Because, murder is fun. But now we're going to do the exact same thing, but it's going to be enemy character. Same code, just change. Oh, yeah, hit it twice on accident. Same code, all you do is change player character to enemy character, and if type enemy to F type player. So same thing. And with that, you've got players, enemies, and they can do damage to each other. Simple enough. And basically, I just made it so whenever they collide, so whenever the two things hit each other, they do damage. Simple. You've got a game.
By the way, if you guys ever have a question, like while presenting, feel free to just raise your hand and we'll start helping you guys out. I don't know exactly how many people are here that are like in program or anything, but if you don't know what like inheritance is, so we mentioned it a couple of times. I don't know if you learned that yet. If you are like in program, just stop us. We'll explain. Yeah, this is like, I guess it's like for people who have some programming experience, but don't have game making experience. So, yeah, as you can see here, is our future plans. Today is 9/21. We're gonna delve into like the actual code after this. We just wanted to like give you a quick technical rundown. But yeah, today is Unit 101. Yeah. Next week is gonna be Game Jam theme development. We're just gonna start getting you guys ready for like jams in general. We're gonna have, as you can see, 1019, 1023, a small baby jam. But yeah, it's just, I guess we're just gonna start getting you guys ready because I don't know, I love game jams and it'll be fun. You'll see. And show of hands actually, who here has not been in a game jam? You know, I participated in one. So a lot of people, the majority actually. So yeah, I hope you guys are excited for that. 10.5, we have idea show off on GitHub.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, that's my idea. So basically what the idea is, I want to have a flow to this. So we're showing off the actual game this week, but next week we're going to show you how to develop from a theme. So a concept, which is what a game jam does. It literally just gives you like a word or maybe a phrase, and you're supposed to make a game off that. So that's what next week's lecture is going to be about. And I'm going to encourage you guys to actually like come up with your own ideas, like literally just 1 to 2 sentences. This is what a cool game would be. So that next week, when we give you the GitHub repository, so the week after when we give you the repository that already has a game that's working, you can implement that idea with the repository that already has a working character, working enemies, and basic physics. So, and obviously that entire like session will be a lot more like interactive. I won't be standing up here on the screen. I'll be helping you guys code. I'll be walking around, answering questions. So once we get the GitHub repository done, it'll just be messing around with stuff. Adding art if you're into that, adding music if you're into that. If you want to start having teams, that'd be great because then you have a group of people you can be like, hey, you want to do the first game jam together with? That's the idea. And then obviously after that, I'm going to show Uni 202, which is just making a more complete game, something that you actually like show outside of a game jam, because game jam games are
Half-baked.
Half-baked. Yes, that's the best way to put it. And yeah, that's basically it. Does anyone have any questions about this?
That's the most important part, 11:10.
That's like Thanos in the background. I'm going to show everything. Okay, I'll get into that. So who here would like the idea to be FSU? Just show that we're better. Yeah, I thought so. That's what real games is. We're just going to show FSU that we're better. And like, it's not that hard, but like we show utter domination. Like, if any of you are football fans, it's going to be the Chiefs versus the Jets. Just absolute smoke show. So that's what real games is going to be. I'm trading you guys up so we can just humble them. Even if our football team doesn't humble them. But we do great, I promise, because honestly, with this repository that we're showing and you guys messing around with the code, you can use that for the real games. So if you make a really good foundation for it, you could accidentally put in that code for the real games. But I'm kidding. A lot of people do that for game jams. They reference prior projects already. So it's not unheard of. It's just that I thought it'd be really great to give you guys that platform.
Well, you should make your own game. It's lame to use prior code because it's stupid and it ruins the integrity of the game jam. But yeah.
You tell me you write singleton code every time you have Unity?
Swear to God, yes.
Swear to me.
Just for game jams. Swear to God.
It was like I sort of moved.
Away from me. I'm not with anymore. Okay. Anyways, I assume if you guys are here, you're already in the Discord. But yeah, again, if you have any questions outside, you can reach us through the Discord. And through email, which I don't think we check that often, but we will check it if you send us an email. The website, that's where you guys like. You can see you get inspiration, as a matter of fact, from the website. There are a lot of people that put up there, or the projects get updated. Like, that was what I'm looking for, but I can't remember. You can see like a bunch of private projects people that people are working on. You can also look at the show off channel in our Discord. That's just like people just continuously add to a project and they're like, this is displayed. And that is the GitHub, that's the repository. It's not complete yet, but I guess if you like wanted to play the game, you could. And yeah, the Instagram is another way to just reach out to us. We're trying to revive our socials a little bit, so we can reach more people that are like interested in game dev. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this. We are going to hop into the code now, show you guys like, I guess we'll also just like show you a demo of what we worked on, and that's what we will help you guys do. We can like shuffle in between the game and the slideshow if you need some of the help, like some help with like the photo and code and yada. So yeah, let's get into that. Perfect. I'm back on it. Oh yeah, you're going to
The game is pretty simple right now. We have a few enemies chasing the player, and if you left click, you can attack. And there's no aiming or anything yet, but we'll add that later. So in the background, you'll see that we have a tile map, and on the edges of the map, we have different types of tiles. So this is created by importing a tile set and bringing a tile out of it.
Yeah.
So by using a tile set, you can easily paint tiles onto a world. So if you want like a cobblestone area, you can just paint it. And currently we don't have multiple layers of the tile set. But if you do have 2 layers, you can layer a cobblestone layer on top of the grass layer, and that will show on top of the grass. So there's no like weird empty space in between. And the tile set we have is fairly big, so you can add a lot of details. So like currently at the edge of the map, it's just empty space, but we could change it for ocean if we wanted to. And currently the whole map is just one green patch. You can add different biomes or areas depending on what you want. And that is something that you can also like, you can download a repo and like open the project and play around with that. And if you want to like submit a change that like overhauls the world, so it's not one green patch, we're leaving that to you. Oh, there's the books I was showing you in the slide earlier. All right. Do you want to show off the movement and not the movement, the damage?
Yeah, well, he's getting damage currently.
Oh,
He should die. Actually, how much health does he have right now? Actually, let's show that off real quick. So as you can see right now, like they're colliding. So basically every time they get hit by damage, so he got soft locked. So basically what happens is we have the player character set up differently. So as you can see, this is the rigid body that makes him move. This is the actual character script I showed off earlier. So as you can see, he has 5 health, max 5, just because it's continuous. He has 0 attack on his own because his sword is his attack, which is a little slash thing. I'm an artist, I know. And then obviously that's the movement speed. And then this is just to make it look good when he's moving, because if not, it's a little rigid. Not necessary, but it's pretty. So why not have it? So as you can see, basically every time they collide uniquely. So if he just kind of runs into the enemies and just gets hit a bunch of times, he'll eventually die.
I don't know if the damage is working on this version. Did you see that?
I pushed it. Did you not update it?
I don't know.
So you should die.
Because I tested it before. I think the damage.
You should also be able to kill them if this is working properly. Killing the scuff. Oh God, this happens.
But this is like an example of how like a game jam would work. You will see bugs like these and you have to fix them.
Yeah. Yeah. So first off, any questions on what we did so far? I know it's pretty simplistic. So what are you guys interested in for a game? Like what would you want to add right now? Sounds, yeah. Sounds, I feel that. Sounds can get interesting because what you need to do for that is you add events, which is basically if something happens, then do this. So that would be, huh?
Like a key press?
Yeah, a key press would be one for like swinging.
You can make it use a ball.
Projectiles, yeah, we can do that. That's actually a pretty simple thing. You know, just live code that. Is that a bad idea? Basically, what you're gonna do is we're just gonna, so whenever you have a projectile like this, what you can just do is basically all you just do is make an object. So as you can see in these right, all the little squares that are blue are called prefabs. Basically, they're stored in Unity in like the Unity folder, and you can create those as many times as you want. You can reference it whenever you want. So it's literally just an object you can add 1,000 times.
So you just spawn in a new object and you can just spawn it in with a rigid body and just say,
Also, I can explain what's going on here.
yeah, sure, go ahead.
So one of the things with the arrow spray is that the notice that it was facing the top right, top left initially. So it looks like this. So one of the best practices in Unity is that you always want, in 2D at least, the arrow to face in the right direction. So by rotating it this way, you can look at, if I select the base of the arrow, you see that the red arrow coincides with the arrow, the actual visual arrow. So these two arrows coincide. Also, notice that I dragged it down, the arrow down here, that creates a prefab. And a prefab is like a blueprint that lets you like create copy that lets you like, you can drag so this is like a blueprint, so like you can drag it in and it'll be the same arrow in both places. And it lets you like up to like, let's say you have like 20 swords in the scene. You want to change the color of all of them. If you have a prefab, you can just change the prefab and it updates all of them. You don't have to go in one by one and do that. So by using prefab, you can save a lot of time. One of the examples of prefabs is our enemies. You saw like 10 of them. So we didn't create 10 enemies one by one. We created one enemy and we duplicated it by using prefab. All right, so I'll be adding the movement of the arrow now. So the first step we need is a rigid body. Make sure it's a rigid body 2D though, if we're doing 2D. And we also need a collider. Let's say a box collider because that's our 2D. Whoops. And make sure the size of the hitbox is correct. So something like that will look good. And now we need to add a new script. So let's create one, C# script.
And for these, for prefab, like for any object really, you want to try to stick to as often as you can with box colliders and the circle colliders, because there is something called a polygon collider, but that one gets muted quickly because basically you just add a bunch of points and it makes a box through each point, just drawing lines through it. But every time you add a point, it makes it harder and harder for the engine to actually register hits. So don't be a perfectionist when it comes to that hitbox. Like you saw with the arrow, we just made a simple box around it. That's because realistically in gameplay, it doesn't matter that much if like you have that little edge of the arrow connected. It's just a quirk of the game then. And you know, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's something you can always just say, especially in the game jam, it's a feature. It's a bulletproof solution. But it just improves the gameplay because if you have a weird a weird polygon collider for something that spawned in a lot, like an arrow or a bullet, you are going to lag someone's system to bricking. It is totally possible. I've seen it happen before. So stick with simple shapes whenever you can. I think we actually have everything down for this.
So we have a projectile script now, which has a value called speed. Serialized field shows the variable in the inspector so you can edit it in Unity directly. So in start, we get a reference to rigid body 2D. This lets the projectile talk to the rigid body and tell it how it should behave. So the way that it should behave is it should move forward. So the arrow should move in the arrow that is pointing. So if you remember that I set it up so the arrow points to the right direction, that represents the front of the arrow. So the way that we do this in code is that we take the right of the arrow and we just tell it to move in that direction at a specific speed. So currently, if you go back in the game, the arrow is not in move. Oh,
It has gravity.
and that's also something you need to keep in mind. So let's turn off gravity. So gravity scale is 0. That's something that we have to know.
Yeah, because since this is a top-down game, it's gonna try to have gravity go like this when gravity should be going into the screen instead.
Yeah.
So that's just because rigid bodies by default will be affected by gravity because it assumes it's supposed to have some mass. You can actually change how heavy it is too, so you can see how well it jumps. So if you're doing like a platformer where it's going to be jumping, where the character will jump up and down the y-axis instead of the z-axis, right? See, whatever. basically you can have a very easy physics system. It's literally just plug and play. But for this, you just disable gravity because you want to give the illusion that they're walking on the ground like this instead of like this.
All right. So as you saw, the arrow doesn't do anything. So the reason for this is that you need to add the arrow confirm, projectile confirm to arrow. So once you do that, it will move forward. So he's getting in there. There we go. Yeah, he's moving down. And if you remember, I talked about how serialized fields tells Unity to show the speed variable in an inspector. You can see that right here. So if you want to say like the arrow should go really fast, so like 100 times faster, like 10 times faster, something like this. And also interestingly, you just saw the arrow go through the tire. So that's something that happens with physics engines. So if something goes too fast, it will tunnel through. So, and that's not something that's great. So usually you try to keep things slow enough that the physics engine can detect it, or you tell it to be more careful. So that will be continuous, and now that happens.
Just because the hitbox for the tile map isn't continuous. So basically though, be careful with continuous variables, because if you do that, basically what's going to happen is after time, we're just going to have everything be continuous, which means that the physics engine is working at 110%. It's like, imagine for anyone that knows their computers well in like games, imagine if you enabled ray tracing for every single object. As the objects on the screen increase exponentially more, you're going to be asking your computer. If not, just imagine more objects, more likely the computer sets on fire. Just a very easy way to think about it. But now we should probably have it so when it hits a character, it just does damage and deletes, right? Which is pretty easy. So with Unity, as long as it has a collider, you can say on collision detect, or sorry, on collision 2D enter, which just means when they first hit, do something. There's a separate one that's called on 2D trigger, which just means that they won't actually physically touch. Basically, if you have it like this and they touch, that's a collision. If they go through each other, it will still read them as kind of brushing against each other, but they won't collide. So that's a way that you can have objects pass through, but still detect. It's called trigger, basically using a trigger system. And for this, we're going to use a collision because we want there to be a, we want it to delete after something hits it. So as you can see, what he's doing is he's just a very simple code. You just say, just as the collision enter, and it's going to try to get a character component. So it's saying, if it's a character, I want you to do damage to it. And as before, it says character take damage, and then change that to player, because it's coming from the player. So what that's going to do is that it's going to send damage to whatever character it hits and says, hey, a player just hit you for X damage. And with the code we have currently, if a player gets hit by an arrow with that damage, it's not going to do anything. It won't kill him because there's no friendly fire currently. But if it hits an enemy instead, which we could change it to, it would actually receive damage at that point. And did you have it destroy on impact too?
That's your code, I don't know.
Just do it after the if statement. We'll just do it either way. Once it hits something, it should destroy. So we just say destroy game object, and that's just saying whatever, because game object refers to whatever is holding the script. I know this is getting complicated, so if anyone's confused, tell me. But basically, this script has to be applied to a game object. So it's just saying, hey, wherever this script is attached to, once it hits something, delete it. Just destroy, remove it entirely. So as you can see, once this goes through, the collision will happen, and the player will probably push back a little bit, but it won't be applied for that long, so he won't move that much. Yeah, just move the arrow a little slower or farther apart so they can actually see it happen. Actually, probably both. Just move them. Oh, and as you can see right here, there's a slash that's already there. So that's because I attached the attack to the player. But once the game actually starts, you don't see the slash because the player hasn't clicked it yet. So it's just a little quirk of the editor where every object is visible unless you manually mark it as invisible. we're getting into the minutia, so it doesn't matter that much, but it's a feature. And as you can see, it did it, and it didn't do damage to the player because player on player damage does not exist. So if he moves it to a snake instead, just firing it in game. Okay, how much damage did you give it? Oh, there you go.
Wait, that worked, right?
Yeah, it worked.
Let him get to the wall first. So the.
How much damage did you give it? Because the snake should have 1 health.
Yeah, 1 health.
Oh, because you know what it is? It's because it's less than 0 for the code. So it's since they have 0 health, they take 2 hits. See, this is what happens in a game jam. You got to be smart about your code. So as you can see, he can actually just have it fire in any direction. So if he rotates an arrow in the editor when he sends it in, it'll actually curve because all it's saying is that red vector, red is right, and then green is up. So with that little trigger, you can always see where it rotates to. So if you tell them that right points this way, it'll fire left. Even though objectively it's to the right, it's left to the game object, which is all that matters. Because all the objects will be moving according to their right. So like I said earlier, just imagine a string. The string is always connected to right and up, and you just pull the strings how you want it to move. Everyone get that so far? You want to add sounds? Do we have sound in this?
We do not have sound.
We don't have sounds in this. You want to show them how to find sounds for me today? So to the player? Actually, yeah. Attach the arrow to the player so we can have the player shoot the arrow by himself. I can that would work. I can show you how to do that. That's really easy. So basically what I'm going to show you now is, like I said earlier, how the sword's attached to the player. We can very quickly just add it to the player as well. So you just go to the player object. You say, you see what he has now. That's attack. That's the sword I was telling you about. You just take the arrow, you drag it to the player. He now has access to the arrow. So then you just tell the thing is that you just, if he's going to have multiple objects, you need to specify how it is, or you can use a serialized field, which is what I'm going to use because it's just better that way. So you don't have the player character script. So you just literally just go into here, you open the player script, and then, oh, and one more note because. Oh, sorry, someone changed the code on me a little. Oh, no, I'm an idiot. I accessed the wrong code. Because it is attack. So I have an attack script which just tells it how to use attacks, which is also connected to the player. Because with Unity, you want to have scripts. They're called atomic scripts. Basically, you want to make it so each individual idea is a different script. So when something goes wrong, it's one tiny piece of code you need to look into instead of 8 million, because the longer the code is, the more likely something is to break. So you guys very much build one brick at a time. So that's what I'm just going to show is this. This is player attack. This is only for the sword. Why is it showing an error? Oh, it's not an error. It's just, sorry, different ID. I'm not exactly used to this. So basically, I just changed this to an if statement.
Yeah, different IDE.
Yep, different IDE makes it weird to see. So now, and for anyone that doesn't know how code works, this is just a very simple statement that I typed wrong, noob. And then instead, I'll just, so input is literally just Unity, the Unity engine saying, hey, I'm tracking all the keyboard inputs. Tell me if something happens. So for this, I'll just say, get button. And then, actually, you know what we should show them? We should show them how to link the IDE to the Unity engine. Because all of this, you can literally link it so all the Unity code just autofills for you. So I believe it's button, it's a button, no, it's not button. Oh, God.
Use get key instead.
Get key, yeah. Get,
No, and get button to get key.
oh, okay, my bad.
Also, just to note, this is the old Unity input system, and this is the old Unity input system, and Unity allows you to mix both of them, which is great for prototyping game jam. So I using the Unity input system because it lets you bind keys really easily. But here, in a game jam and you just really want to get something done fast, so you can test it or you can get your game out, use the old Unity input system and you can just type in input get key and test if that key is down. What's in new Unity input system, it takes a few more steps in that. So you have the key checking code, but then you also have to set it up in the editor so that Unity knows that that key exists.
And basically what I did here, so the IE enumerator, all that does is it just says, I want to have some lambda function. I promise it's not scary. Lambda functions basically just run a little differently than regular functions. In this case, it's just a timer. So I just say, hey, after a certain amount of time, do something. So as you see for the first code, it waits a few seconds and then it stops the slash. So that's just a really useful function, but you have to use a enumerator for that. I actually don't know how to say that. I'm going to assume it's enumerator because I don't make mistakes. But yeah.
I can explain it for you.
No, thank you.
So what we're trying to do right now is use acting a coroutine. So coroutines are special in Unity in that you can use it to like delay code. So you see that things like yield, return, move, wait for seconds, and that lets Unity know that the code after that statement should be like ran after a few seconds. So attack, we first. So let's see.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So let's see. So we have a yield, we can wait for seconds. So the top log, so that's swing, that will log first, and then after the wait for seconds finishes, you'll see finish.
And there's a third code for attacking where if something gets hit by damage, it also says it. So you'll see in the attack log very often you'll see swing, hit, and then finish, which is just quite literally saying there was an attack that was started, and then after a certain amount of time, it either finishes or it hits and then finishes. So it's good to have debugging practices, which is quite literally just saying, hey, if this happens, just pop in the chat that this happened. And then cool. Oh yeah, and his IDE warns about expensive methods. So technically logging code is an expensive method. So just it's good for debugging, but once you actually like send it for someone to play, you don't want to have a debug log running. Just comment it out is really easy. So in theory, I think it should be done. But do you need a projectile class? Whatever, I'll just do it that way. So now I just made it so I didn't save. So now I added a new game object for the attack class, so I can actually reference the arrow. So once it loads in, you'll actually see that it added an arrow, but there's no game object for that. So it's good practice whenever you have something like this, that you save it as a child, just so you know where it's coming from. So I'm just going to throw an arrow in there. And then in theory, this should work. We'll see. But so now if I hit space, object is game.
I think you should reference the prefab instead of that.
Yeah. Oh, did I not? Oh, I didn't reference prefab. You're right. My bad. Yeah. But as you can see, like the code's running and it's kind of spawning out of nowhere. It's kind of cool, but it's definitely not what I wanted to do. But this is all about game. So I just need to make it. There's just a way to instantiate it, basically spawn it relative to the player. I didn't do that. So right now it just spawns from the heavens and it smites our enemies, which is kind of fun. Honestly, I like that. But now you can actually see I made it so as long as the arrows are still firing, you can't swing your sword. So, or you can just stop the game because I made it mouse click. But I spawned in an arrow, and then as long as the arrow is supposed to be firing, there's a cooldown. So for this one, the cooldown's pretty short. It's frustrating.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So could you pause the game?
Yeah,
So what was the point of adding the arrow as a child of the player?
So well, for this specifically, I guess you kind of don't need it. Because what it's doing right now is not important. So you don't need to. I just like having it referenced to the player so you know where the code's coming from. You can also spawn it in with the player by not using the prefab directly, but that's bad coding. William corrected me. It's just that I'm coding offhand. So I'm, depending if you've ever done a technical interview, you know how you don't get the first great idea the first time.
Okay, and also, could you click on the player and the hierarchy?
In the hierarchy, sure.
And could you scroll down to the bottom of the inspector?
The inspector. Okay, so like this.
Inspector as in right window.
Oh, this. Okay.
This, yeah. What is the plus sign next to player text mean?
The plus.
Just that little tiny icon. It looks like
This. Oh, okay. So that's for basically that just means that it was added to the character in game, but not to the prefab.
No, so
Never mind.
So Unity has a prefab inheritance system essentially. So one of the things is that player actually is a character. So if I select the prefab, we have characters, enemy and player, and then we also have a base character prefab. So if you look at the icons here, we have the icons are different. So character is like a full blue, and enemy and player have a gray side to them. So player is all of the components on character, so that's the player specific components. Enemy is all of the components on character, plus all of the enemy components. So this green plus here, it's actually new in 2022. Where this functionality, but it do not have your icon. So you might see a few differences there. But this means that the enemy character script do not exist on the character prefab and is added specific on the enemy prefab.
Go ahead.
So when you import sound effects into Unity, as far as I know, there's no like default sound editor.
It's a sound mixer.
There is.
Yeah, it's sound. So there's sound source, which you can use, and then
Audio source.
Yeah, audio source. So audio source. Basically, just use that. But what you're gonna want to do is so as we showed earlier. Sorry, William has an entirely different setup from what I do, so I'm kind of like waffling a little. So we have something called the manager file. This would be for like everything that you need for like big controls. So managers should be singletons, as William mentioned earlier. Singletons can be referenced by all scripts, and there's one of them only. So an audio manager would be something that you'd want to make, where it would just be like there's an overarching audio manager that you can reference to, because what you can do is you can pull information from it and also send information back to it.
Okay.
So what you do is you make an audio manager. You can look this up. It's like there's 1,000 tutorials on it. It's why I sometimes use older code for these type of things is because I'll look up a video that's from like 2017.
Right. Well, like I was just asking because like for the game dev classes that we have at UF, like, they give us a bunch of really not so good redux that are not good. Yeah, they're not the best. And so if I were to for some reason like bring in sound effects, there's no option to control volume. So I'd have to like go back and forth with Audacity to like adjust the volume and sound mix it. And the thing is like, yeah, I didn't know that it wasn't a thing within Unity itself as like a native.
No, that's just
I didn't know it was like a game manager thing that you're supposed to script on your own.
So yeah, so the sound files, they should be modified to like they have the same like volume when you put them, or at least like at the volume that you want it to be in game. And then in game, there's a mixer which lets you like affect how the audio source or a group of audio sources play the audio. So like if you have like background music, you can assign it to an audio group that you can like control the volume of the background music independently of like sound effects. But that only applies to like groups. It doesn't apply to like single files. You can edit a group of audio sources, but you can't. But like anything that's specific to a single clip, you have to edit it outside of like Audacity or other program.
Right.
it's best practice to kind of like whenever you have a sound effect to just like for example, if you have like all sound effects, just have like a decibel in mind that you want to have it around, And then, so they're all consistent. So when you do measure it, so like basically like all game music will be by default like 60 decibels. That's a bit loud, but just pick a number and then stick with it. And then and then you can just make a slider. We'll show that in Unity 202 how to make a slider with a sound mixer. It's not too hard once you get the actual code down. But yeah, no. Basically, whenever you're making a game like this, you want to have a few managers just to make your life a lot easier. You want a game manager, a sound manager, and then probably a menu or something like that, like a systems managers. I guess you could also put in the game manager, but I like to have things a little more blocked out. If you want to have achievements in your game, an achievement manager is a necessary thing. Save manager. Basically, anytime you have a big overarching idea, you probably want a manager for it. Just be smart about it.
Right.
Ask people that have done Unity before, because you can make a manager for something really stupid and it works, but it's bad code. So that's kind of the idea of this club, is that we can actually help you polish the ideas that you have in your head. And it's also 6. So
I guess we should wrap it up.
So anyways,